So, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, Amanda was like, what do you want to do tonight? And we were sitting down at the beach. We do that a lot because we live like a block away. Wisconsin is cold, but man, the summers are beautiful. And I just said, I really want to watch this documentary tonight on Netflix that just came out. It's called Counterpunch. It's about boxing. And she loves watching boxing and UFC as compared to some of the other sports stuff I watch. I think she gets a little sick of baseball sometimes. But she's into it, and she was like, oh, I don't know. And then we watched the film, and we were both in tears by the end of it. How this relates to the mission of the podcast is that Jay Bulger, the guy that did this film that deals very heavily with the last free gym in New York City, where, underprivileged kids can train. Now, this is a gym that's produced the last 2 Olympians. This program has produced Mike Tyson and Muhammad Ali, and it's functionally gone away in the United States. I volunteer with a similar program here in Kenosha, Wisconsin, called Straight Up Boxing. And so Jay not only made a film about this, but he's actually working with the gym in Harlem to try to get another one in the Bronx. And so this is a guy that I'm going to be straight with you. He's a little rough around the edges. Like I try to keep this profanity free. He curses like a sailor. I'm not going to go back and bleep him because I just don't have the time. But he's definitely a guy who's rough around the edges. Definitely says some stuff that I probably wouldn't agree with foreign policy wise. But this is about finding common ground, and whatever, and that's actually why I love the fact that we disagree in the interview, is whatever you think of the man's politics, and half the audience will disagree with it by definition, right? You can't deny that he's really putting himself on the line and trying to help with something that's going to help poor kids avoid a life of crime. And so let's get into it. Counterpunch is on Netflix and Netflix only, so if for some reason you're not a Netflix subscriber, I guess you're not going to see it unless you want to do the free week or whatever. And we actually start out there by talking about what is a success on Netflix, because that's so elusive. My name is Seth Tower Hurd. This is about how boxing can really lead to a life of peace by keeping kids out of gangs. All right, let's do it. Let's be neighbors again.
And if we can't walk in love, we're a noisy little gong, a bitter little song that a bully sings out of key. And if we can't walk in peace, we'll forget about the least of these. A mother crying on her knees for a boy who's locked away. There's a voice calling me.
So right now we're in downtown Kenosha, Wisconsin. Joe Lewis actually trained about like 2 blocks from my apartment when he was training for when he beat the dude that was Cinderella Man in the movie. That
Braddock.
What's that?
Braddock,
yeah. So he got kicked out of because they were fighting at what was then it was the White Sox Stadium. I can't think what it was called then. Comiskey Park in Chicago.
Cool.
And he got kicked out of Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, because they wouldn't let him train there because he was black. So he came over to Kenosha, and it just became like this media, kind of fiasco. And it became the first like kind of crossover black superstar in America. So just kind of cool local tie-in here. So are you in New York? Is that where you do?
Yeah, I'm in New York. I'm like right across the street from the Hells Angels main location. They live like in that building.
So the Hells Angels headquarters?
Yeah, the Angels headquarters are right there.
I didn't I don't know, I guess I just didn't think Hells Angels would be that like metropolitan. Like
they've been on this street for I don't know 40, 50 years or something.
Have you read the Hunter S. Thompson book on them or not?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, it's
that was more of one faction, then came the New York faction, I guess.
Okay.
New York headquarters.
Okay. Are they good neighbors?
Well, you can't really park here because of their motorcycles. And if you move one of the cones or take one of their parking spaces, they'll shoot you. As
oh, my gosh.
Exhibited a couple months ago when someone took their parking space and he got shot.
Oh, my gosh. Did the gentleman live or not?
No, he died.
Oh, my gosh. I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah, Chicago had something way lesser of a situation going on where, like, if you marked your parking spot with like a cone or something, and somebody parked there, people were like setting cars on fire in like retribution. But at least you can get another car. You can't get another life.
Oh yeah.
So holy cow. Okay, well, Hell's Angels are just as bad as
As you would like to, as you imagine. Yeah. Apparently, I mean, they didn't even catch the Hell's Angel. He just fled or something, and no one was a witness.
Jiminy. Yeah, it seems like
an old school New York story that's taking place in a time when people don't get away with shit. But apparently, this guy just killed him in open day for taking his parking place and then bolted.
Wow. I don't know how to transition out of that. We're going to get into some pretty heavy topics here with the film, but beforehand, can we talk about just what it means to? Because I write about TV and film for a magazine called Relevant, and do some other stuff as well. It's more confusing to me as far as like what supporting something looks like in the streaming era, because I used to like say, if you really like this, if you saw it in theaters, go pick up a copy of it, because that ensures that whatever kind of project that is going to get made again. You got the masthead on Netflix the day you came out, which is fantastic. So what is the, like, if, for people who like the movie, like what ensures that Netflix might want to do something like this again, or, use your next project? Is it like the number of times it gets seen, or the kind of, the demographic it hits, or what does that look like?
The weird thing about working for Netflix is that I'm in the dark, like my Beware Mr. Baker movie, I traveled around the world, won grand jury prizes. I was really incentivized to go to film festivals because there's money to be made and travel to add. And then, press and so forth. With this movie, it was just kind of like I had a premiere, and then the next day it was on Netflix, and they don't care about press, and they don't release numbers they just tell you it's doing overperforming or underperforming, and based on the schematics, it just kind of makes its way to people. So I guess the more people who watch it, the better it is for Netflix, but it's a weird place to be in as a filmmaker, to be completely honest.
Well, I from what I understand the system, and they're to be blunt, I don't think it matters at this point if I piss them off or not, but like, as opposed to working with PR people and movie studios, they're just a lot weirder. Like, I don't think they care as much, because it's like, the individual transaction, if somebody's trying to pitch a movie, they have one weekend, right? And so, and I'm certainly not the biggest deal in the world, but I do occasionally get invites to get flown out to press junkets and that type of thing. So obviously, I'm on some people's radar, right? Like they don't fly me to Disney World for a private screening of Star Wars, like they would have, for the critic of the New York Times or something like that. But Netflix just literally doesn't seem to care about like interacting at all. And from what I understand about the system is they're trying to just get enough content for no matter what kind of viewer you are, there's something for you. So it could be that like something just, would tank by traditional standards, but because they're trying to hit whatever niche, and that's in that niche, like they're happy. So I'm just very, I
think they're happy. Look, man, same reason I boxed. I'm a competitive guy. I wish that, I hope that it could win an Academy Award. I don't know if it checks the boxes, but hey, On the Ropes was similar. I don't know, man. It's weird. Like, I don't get any feedback, and I would love to have it win. Maybe that would make a difference in its life. I don't know.
Yeah. I asked not to trash Netflix, but because I want people to, you're taking the time to do this, and I think the movie says something really important, and I want people to, be able to like support what's going on. That's just so dang ambiguous, because it's not like you have a merch store. I'm like, hey, if you like the movie, go out and buy a T-shirt so that so that it can get made. Or maybe you do have a T-shirt. I don't know.
I don't. I like it's ambiguous to me too. I'm confused. Like I know people have seen it. I was wearing a Lil B Hop T-shirt the other day, and 3 people came up to me over the course of the day saying, "Oh, I love that guy." I'm like, "How do you even know who he is?" And they're like, "Oh, he's in the movie." So, I'm like judging my performance based on wearing T-shirts in public and shit. Like, that's where I'm at. Like, I have no other real gauge. I've read from some people reviews. I've read some critical reviews. Boxing people really like it, and so that's great. I think it's funny that some boxing people would not like the movie because they don't like Peter Quillen's role in boxing, but it's kind of like, no offense to those people, I feel like it's really thick-headed to that's the reason that I followed him in the first place. I was like,
yeah,
follow him because like he's my hero. I followed him because I felt like he, was controversial and got me into issues and career trajectories that, alternatively, if I'd followed Terrence Crawford, he would just won a bunch of fights, and that's cool. But
yeah,
I wanted to have someone who was dealing with complex, political, familial, issues that, were inherent to his story that were different that people haven't seen before, albeit anti-hero, whatever. So yeah, I get some of these reviews going like, oh, the movie can't be good because it's about a guy who gave up his boxing belt. And I'm just like, but that's the reason that I made it.
Oh yeah, I mean that's so much of the story of what's going on right now. And actually, I am writing a little bit more about music. Writing isn't my main gig. It's just something I've been doing for about 15 years for the love, basically, right? I actually am doing my first album review Friday. I got asked to cover the Arcade Fire record that's coming out. But when I was doing a lot of music stuff and I was getting comps to a lot of shows and that type of thing, there's a certain kind of fan that and I'm not exactly sure what in your neighborhood would be like the equivalent to this. But there's like a hierarchy of like in Chicago, you play Shoebuzz on your way up, which holds 100 people. And, like John Mayer, Death Cab for Cutie, all these iconic acts have been through there. And then the next time you come back, maybe you play for 500 people. And then, the third time you come back, if things are going well, maybe you play for 1,500 at House of Blues. The people who saw you the first 2 times around sometimes feel angry that it's like not just for them now. And I feel like boxing fans, in some ways, are sort of like people who see a band early. Like they kind of just want it just for them, and they kind of want other people to stay out. And I mean, there's a segment of that within the sport that it's fairly unique in the sports world. It's not like NBA people.
They're the worst. Boxing fans are some of the worst people in the world. Like they really are, and I'm guilty of it sometimes too. I mean, at the same time, I think there's something to be said about at least my personal interest in boxing that does not incorporate or include or necessitate people being rendered unconscious. I like seeing like a high level. I love watching Mayweather fights because he beats people technically and then they leave. Boxing is inherently flawed because most of the people, A, have never boxed, B, don't have the courage to box, and C, are ignorant to the sport itself, and lastly, love watching people be rendered unconscious. So when you have those type of people, it's complicated because as a fighter, I love what Mayweather has done because these people aren't fans; they're people who want to see you, kill someone and or be killed for their entertainment. So when you exist in spite of them, as we've seen with Mayweather, you make a lot more money and live a lot healthier life. Considering this, especially because what is the objective goal and what is the objective level of success given how convoluted the definitions of being the best are these days. It's never good enough, for these people. And the fact that people think McGregor has a chance against Mayweather is just a great indication of how idiotic people are and ignorant to the sport. So I don't know. I felt like watching Peter and following Peter was really interesting for me, just because he was so kind of, I don't know, would dare say sacrilegious in the boxing world for giving up his belt or whatever. And, I thought it was really interesting just to see how much vitriol his decisions had, created for himself and the world and the internet and all this shit.
And for just, if I can do a quick recap here for the people who are going to watch the film after hearing the interview, boxing has split into kind of 4 major promotions. And one of those is, what is Al Heyman's company? I forget. Premier Boxing, right? Correct?
Yeah.
And it's such a mafia situation that the guy that, dude, I'm such a dog person. This is like, I'm gonna lose my.
He's a good dog.
Yeah, I'm like like the crazy old cat lady stereotype. Like I could be that with dogs. Like, I lost you. Hello.
Oh, right. There you go.
You're back. There we go. Since this is audio, his dog just came on camera, and he's a cool dog. No, but just to recap what you were talking about with why this guy is controversial, Al Heyman runs boxing in like this like backdoor mafia type of thing, and he told a guy just to stop being champion for a while so he could build up his name, and Peter Quillen just did. And that's the controversy around like, isn't this supposed to be about the best stepping up and challenging the best? Getting into Lil B Hop, who this is who was a fighter that you watched turn pro, and was he like 7-0 at the end of the film?
Yeah, he's like 7-0 now. Yeah, I've been to all his fights. He's like a little brother to me. I love him the most out of the characters in the film, if only to say that, like, you know, I have real connection with him as a big brother. You know,
yeah.
I've helped him and he's helped me, and it was nice to give someone an opportunity like that this early in their career.
Well, and I actually volunteer here in Kenosha, Wisconsin, with a similar program called Straight Up Boxing. That it's similar to Cops and Kids in that they train, they train kids regardless of their ability to pay. The gym just produced a super heavyweight national champion at the Junior Olympics, so we're pretty thrilled right now.
Cool. Oh yeah, I mean the video, I think.
Yeah. So, I think he's going to college this fall. Just graduated from high school, and you know is kind of playing with what building his resume looks like to turn pro. And I don't know if that's going to become his full-time focus or not. I don't think you can do college and boxing, but the film really goes into I think why boxing is so transformative, and that, like, you know, at this gym, and probably the same one for Cops and Kids that you covered, it's really hard to screw up your life and get in a lot of trouble when, like, you're not even allowed to have soda.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to have fried foods. Like, it takes away the margin, like, you know, to get shot dealing weed or something, because when you got to go to bed at 9:30, it's just hard to become a weed dealer and get killed over it.
Sure. And you know what? You could try to do all that stuff, but you'll end up getting knocked out. So, like, you know, it's a quick learning experience, you know, like you can't do anything but box if you're boxing.
Yeah, and I think the difference between, like, you know, football or basketball is a transformative tool, which, you know, we certainly see that at times, but, like, if you step into a boxing ring, it is you. Like, there's nobody else to blame for your lack of preparation. And there's somebody in there trying to take your head off.
Yeah, and you know, it's not a team sport. So I think one thing that people tend to forget is that boxing is the individual sport of the inner city. And for me, for instance, team sports never made sense. So boxing did. And, you know, for all the problems that boxing has, it also creates opportunities. You know, it's dangerous, and, you know, I love to be daring, and I think that idea applies most pertinently to people from the inner city who are daring enough to rob a bank or something, you know, like,
yeah,
boxers tend to have personality attributes that can also lend to being a good gangbanger.
I mean, it's pretty basic psychology that, like, teenagers need risks to usher into adulthood, right? And when we, like, in an increasingly sanitized world where we tell kids not to, like, you know, jump off the swings at recess, I mean, if you take away any kind of healthy risk taking, it's going to go into something that, you know, that can be pretty negative. And that goes for both affluent teenagers in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and for, you know, kids in some of the worst neighborhoods in America. And it's
definitely not a white guy sport.
What's that?
Definitely not a white boy sport.
Well, you know what? Right now it's not. But if you look at what I find to be so fascinating about the history of boxing is decade by decade, you can see what the prominent immigrant group was by who the boxing champions were. So,
shit, though. I'm saying it's and white in the sense that, yeah, maybe in Ohio and Kelly Pavlik and maybe by you, but Luis Feliciano's by you. I like him. Anyway, my point being that you know, it's a sport for immigrants and
yeah. Well, that's what I was saying. You can see
nothing
you
to
could see
lose.
who was coming into New York, Boston, Chicago by who the boxing champions were, because you get a decade of Italians, you get a decade of Jews, you get a decade of Irish, and then you get into now, and you see, it becomes Puerto Rican, Haitian. It's literally the sport of the hungry, and that, like, if you've got 13 people in a 1-bedroom apartment, you see it as you can literally fight your way out of that situation.
Sure, but UFC makes boxing look like brain surgery, though. I mean, UFC is so. There's all these different martial arts, but I don't. It seems so crude in comparison. It makes boxing look gentlemanly, which it really does. I don't understand UFC.
I grew up on it. I was I was like 10 years old when the first one came out, and I watched it with my uncle. So I've been around the sport for,
better or worse. I just find it so much more brutal, whatever.
The risk of brain damage is that, CTE is actually lower because you're not taking the repeated hits, because 4-ounce gloves, you get hit, you're done. But it certainly does visually look, pretty different. So, with the gym you go in, and it's called Cops and Kids. It's the last free gym in New York. I'm assuming you're a native, right? Like you grew up and this is where you learned. This is where you.
But I moved to the Bronx when I was 18 to go to college.
Okay. And when did you start fighting then? When
I was like 13 or something, I started boxing.
Okay. And where was that at?
In DC.
In DC. Was it like a free program, like after school program, or was it like you actually had to pay for membership? I
trained at the gym where like Mark Too Sharp Johnson and a lot of the great DC fighters trained at. I had to drive the guy who was in charge of like collecting money I drove him home every day, so I got to work out there for free. They let younger people who were disadvantaged work out there for free. And I also boxed in the Police Boys Club, so similar to Alice Cup and Kids. But more importantly, when I really took boxing seriously, it was when I was in the Bronx and I boxed at the police athletic leagues. And I saw how important they were to the community. So when they closed down that program here in New York, it was obviously created a gap and, opportunities for kids. So, for instance, the character I followed, Christopher Lil B Hop Colbert, now, whereas when I was boxing, he could have walked down the street to go to a free boxing gym. Now he has to take the subway 2 hours to Brooklyn.
And is he still training out of there now that he's pro, or was he able to get somewhere else?
No, that's it.
That's it? Okay.
Great gym right now in New York. And it's highly successful, and it's about cops connecting with kids, and Evander Holyfield, Mike Tyson, Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, you name it. So many of the great boxers in history were products of police coaching. Mike Tyson was first trained by a cop at the juvenile detention center, and Ali fought at the police athletic league too. It's the staple community boxing gym in America, and New York was where it was founded. So it had been going on here since like the teens or 20s, so almost 100 years, and then they closed the program. So I don't know, it was a real shame, but it was also an opportunity seen by Sergeant Pat Russo, who was involved with the Police Athletic League boxing program and decided to start his own program with Teddy Atlas, the great boxing commentator and trainer.
As a society, one thing that's hard for me to wrap my head around is how much like pushback there is. There seems to be one way or another around any kind of like prevention program. It just seems like those are really hard to fund. On the addiction side of things.
You saw the film because it costs $65,000 a year to lock a kid up, and it costs them $50,000 a year just to run the gym.
I know which I don't get. Like, if you were the most selfish person in the world, this is just a huge savings for the taxpayers if this program were to go nationwide again.
Just fucking, like you save 2 kids from going to jail, and we're saving $120,000. Do the math. This since the movie came out, they have 100 new kids. Say like 5 of them, get obsessed with boxing. I mean, that's like how much money is that? 320,000 or something. So that's the money I'm saving taxpayers, and I'm also by it popularizing thing, that's my contribution, and I think it's an important one. You know, they closed the program because they said head trauma and, you know, it's dangerous and this and that. But again, like, this isn't for people who are like, should I play tennis or box? This is for people who are like, maybe I should be a gangbanger, or maybe I could take that risk that would, you know, I would get from gangbanging and, like, you know, pursue an Olympic sport. Like, whatever they say about boxing, it's an Olympic sport.
It is. It is. And, you know, at least I haven't spent much time in New York, and I've really never gotten out of downtown Manhattan on quick business trips, right? But speaking to the south side of Chicago, there are neighborhoods where you just join a gang because you got to, because if not, you're going to get the tar beat out of you. And seeing our program here locally, some kids just come in because after you box for 6 or 7 months, maybe they're never going to compete, but they're never going to get bothered again because people know that screw with them. Because you know, it's funny. I just watched a parking lot fight I happened to stumble upon on YouTube of drunk people getting into it in a parking lot, you know, throwing fists, and I was just like, okay. Anybody that's been in a boxing gym for a week could avoid getting hit in a situation like that, because people think you're like tough guys that fight on the street. Anybody that's had basic boxing training, you're not going to be able to put a fist on them.
I think furthermore, I think that for me at least, and for most of the people I know who box, like, and it's the same for martial arts, and boxing is the most elemental of martial arts. I think once you learn how to box, you don't really ever get into fights because you respect your abilities that much more, and you feel like more of a man just walking down the street and not needing to prove yourself.
Yeah, no, I would totally agree with that. So there's a revitalization a little bit of the program because of this. Have you seen any evidence that this can, you know, I know they're trying to get the program into other cities. Is there any evidence that this is, you know, that this could go on right now, or that there's
the first focus is to get another gym where I used to be in the Bronx, you know, has the highest poverty rate in America. In the South Bronx, for instance, highest concentration of poor people in the United States in the South Bronx. So I think they need a gym there. So I'm endeavoring with Atlas Cops and Kids to find a, you know, South Bronx location, and, you know, we're trying to expand into the boroughs that were lacking as a result of closing the PAL, and then hopefully we can expand, you know, across the country.
By the way, and I have no idea if anything will come of this, but a friend of mine who is, I mean, has accomplished some pretty big things in life. His company gives, and it's so funny because his company gives $50,000 a year to a different organization every year. I shot him an email this morning. I was like, hey, dude, why don't you just open an entire gym with this check this year? And I gave him your phone number and email address. So if he reaches out,
run a gym for a year.
What's that?
$50,000, we could run a gym for a year.
Yeah, that's what I said. Is like, why don't you just put a gym in a new spot, like, you know, and reach several hundred kids on that cash? So it'd be cool if that happened. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, you know, as I've been volunteering for the last couple of years, one of the things that does get frustrating when you're trying to get something done is it's been statistically proven that the outrage on the more that you are posting on social media, the less likely you're actually ever able to volunteer or donate. And so usually the people who are the most outraged online about like big problems we're never going to touch are the ones who are least likely to do anything. And, you know, I mean, I'm fortunate enough to have somewhat of a national voice, and that voice is really limited to film and TV and some music, right? So it's not like I'm going to affect, you know, foreign policy or disease research or something like that. But I live in a city of 100,000 people, and I can keep a gym running that serves the most vulnerable of that group. And, you know, to be frank, by realizing that I'm not that big of a deal and not acting like it online, that frees me up to actually get things done in the real world.
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, you know, or like I made a movie about the things that I was interested in. I don't know if I'm capable of opening or running a gym, but just, doing my part too. We're both doing it. And then, getting the word out is important. And maybe someone like your friend will give me a call,
Yeah. By the way, you were editing when when we first picked up the video here. Is this project related to the last one, or is it completely?
No. I made a movie in Iran about skateboarding.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
How concerned were you personally about, just with some of the arrests that have happened, and obviously this kid just, died coming back from North Korea. It didn't concern you at all going over there?
I mean, I think the main problem, no offense, is that we talk about Iran in the same sentence as North Korea. Like Iran is a highly advanced civilization, and they are far more moderate than so many of our allies, particularly Saudi Arabia.
I was going to bring up Saudi Arabia, yeah.
Like, look, 65% of university students there are women. 53% of the government is run by women. It was way different than our propaganda and fake news have propagated. And, we should have an embassy there, and we should be allies or to the furthest extent of our possibilities there, because they're by far the most intelligent, pragmatic, and advanced civilization in the Middle East. And on the contrary, we are allies with the most cretinous, fucking skullduggery filled motherfuckers in Saudi Arabia, who, by the way, don't have elections and don't let women drive. So I was in Iran for the election, and I was in Iran when ISIS attacked their parliament. The same sons of bitches, Wahhabi, following Sunni, just Mongoloids who attacked them, first terrorist attack in 30 years in Tehran, are the same people attacking us, and they're all, at least religiously supported by our allies in Saudi Arabia, who our scumbag president goes and sword dances with. And sure, it all comes down to oil and Israel and all this stuff, but I don't know why this guy went to jail recently in Iran, but I had a wonderful time, and I met all of the most important people I wanted to meet, and they make the best films in the Middle East. They've won 2 out of the last 3 or 4 Academy Awards with Farhadi. And, it's crazy to think that, we continue to talk about them like it's North Korea. These people are fucking rich, and they have democratic elections, and they're beautiful, and they have a lot of problems. But in the scheme of things, it's no worse than, our vacation haven, Morocco, women are treated like dogs, and they have a king. So go figure.
Well, I'm not going to speak to Iran without knowing more about it. If I can clarify my statement, they did help. 2015 or so, they held some Navy personnel, some sailors for a while, and they wound up letting them go. And it seems like they just kind of
for a couple hours. It was a thing, and no one got hurt. Okay. Alternatively, Saudi Arabia blew up the World Trade Center. They held some sailors for a couple of days or a couple hours. We were in their waters or something. It sounded like they were just following protocol and were quick to return them.
Well, and I'm not going to, again, without a lot of research, I'm not going to speak to the Saudi Arabia thing without, knowing a lot about it. I will say that probably the alliance that bothers me the most with the U.S. is Turkey, because Turkey was an empire from 1300 until last century. They fell apart in World War I.
Right.
There's no doubt they're funding ISIS. There's no doubt they want their empire back. And we have this weird thing in the United States where Turkey committed just World War II level genocide against the Armenian people in World War I, and we won't recognize it because we don't want to piss them off. So that one I'll speak to. The other two, I try to.
Well, when Egypt fell, with this Arab Spring, Egypt was an ally. Turkey used to be an ally. They've become more Muslim and theocratical and dictatorial with the president. But anyway, things are shifting so much out there, and the one bright place like I see that has an incredible future, I think, is that I know objectively looks good for the future. It's changing rapidly, is Iran. They have so much money and they have so much education. It's just a highly advanced place. You know, it's a 95% literacy rate. There are people should want to talk to.
You know, and if I can speak to a little bit of the history of that, and you may know this, but for the purpose of the audience of that region, I mean, this is the area that invented algebra and were incredibly advanced. And then they went through a pretty negative thing in their history called Genghis Khan burned it all down.
Well, Iran, 2,500 years ago, had the first declaration of human rights. You know, like freedom of speech, all these things, like. So many of these things they had thousands of years ago. They were one of the first places to have. Anyway, it's come different directions, obviously, with the supreme leaders and ayatollahs and so forth. But I will say things are changing there for the better, and I was happy to go. And you know, I would just reiterate to all your viewers and listeners that don't believe the hype. I'm proof of that, and no one can disagree with me because I just went there and spent a month there and had a great time, and that I didn't get one bad vibe. They were all lovely and happy to have me.
Are you just totally taking that trip solo, or did you have a crew with you? Like, how do you actually get the project
I went with
made?
my best friend, who's an Iranian producer, filmmaker, and we went and I stayed at his family's house, and we had a wonderful time. It was cool.
The other kind of interesting thing that Iran is really has really embraced as far as Western culture goes is they have a really thriving country music scene.
Really?
In the show notes, I'll when I throw this podcast live, I'll throw an article. But it's pretty. I mean, I grew up on a farm. I love country music, and there's some pretty good bands singing in English coming out of Iran, which is pretty crazy.
I mean, they have all types of stuff. They have skateboarding. That's why I went there.
So what did you find? We
did a
skateboarding culture.
Film about some people, some kids. It was like kids, but the Iranian version without the AIDS.
Without the what?
Without the AIDS. You know, the kids.
Okay. No, I haven't seen it. So.
Kids from the 90s, you know, with, anyway.
Okay. No, I'll put it on the list.
In the 90s about, kids in New York City. It was called Kids. It was, what's her name won an Academy Award for it or whatever.
Okay. That sounds like a Sofia Coppola project. When you just say what's her name.
Chloe Sevigny started it. It was Harmony Korine, and the director is who's the director of Kids? I forget.
We can. I mean, we can Google it. I can throw in the show notes or whatever. So what happens? So to kind of wrap up what you're doing in the future. So trying to make the Bronx thing a real life thing. Is there a GoFundMe or anything like that that I can link to? Or
at first, I need to find a location because part of the business plan for Alice Cops and Kids is getting a free gym donated in a basement and some place. So
without that, you can't.
We're just looking for the space now. I got cops out on the beat looking for it, and then we could raise some money, and I think it's gonna be okay. I mean, we're all taking our time. I mean, look, the gym's produced the last two Olympians from New York. The only two. So it's doing well, and it's packed right now. So that's cool. And Lil B Hop, who's a star out of there, he's today at 5, I'm taking him to go meet Denzel Washington and some people. He's he's gonna star in The Eliminator or something, maybe.
Oh, he's gonna act.
He's gonna act in The Eliminator Part 2.
Okay, that's fantastic, man. And by the way, I really definitely don't just listen to the interview. Go back and get this kid's story because it's just amazing. Did you have a connection there, or did somebody just find him because of the film, or where did that come from?
I ran into him a couple times. I saw him win the national championship, the Olympic trials qualifier in Spokane. And then I saw him, he just happened to be in Peter Kid Chocolate Quillen's training camp to fight against Andy Lee. And I was like, oh, this kid's magic. And plus he's from the Bronx and he goes to that gym, that Alice Cops and Kids gym. So I don't know. I just felt like he checked a lot of boxes. And
Yeah, no, I meant it specifically on the acting. Did you play a role in connecting him to trying to get an acting job?
oh, someone saw the movie and hit him up. So he just asked me to come today to this meeting because he doesn't want to get taken advantage of.
No, that's good. He's thinking about that right now because it's, the number one reason I think that athletes go broke is because their stupid friends they grew up with think they can all run a car dealership or a restaurant, which is like the two highest.
Oh man.
I mean, I think it was Holyfield went broke over that. I think it was Mike Matheny put all his money in a car dealership when went belly up. He's the manager of the St. Louis Cardinals now, but between becoming a coach and retiring, I think he got pretty tight because. And it's always your friends you grew up with. It's like, hey, I can run this. No, you can't.
Yeah.
You were not qualified to run a business by growing up with somebody who became athletically successful.
Yeah, for better or worse, I don't have those problems, but I'm people on how to do it. I'm a documentary filmmaker.
So apart from Twitter and social media and that type of thing, people who want to keep up with either your work with the gym or this next film, is this something that's going to tour the festival circuit and then probably go to states?
No.
How's it gonna work?
It's on Netflix. They paid for it from the beginning, so it's just on Netflix forever.
Oh, it's just on net. Okay, so I meant the Iran skateboarding documentary.
Oh, the Iran skateboarding documentary. I hope Netflix is listening. That will be taking place at Cannes Film Festival, after which we will have a big auction, and I'll choose who I want to go with. I don't want to do the original thing again. It's just limiting. I like going to festivals, is what I'm saying, and like selling that way, and just getting it out there. I like celebrating, so.
Yeah,
I'll make less money to celebrate, Like, I want to go to Cannes Film Festival. I want to go to Sundance. I want to meet like-minded people and my fellow film, society.
Well, and as a creative, if you're in a band or something like that, you get up and play a song, you see what the audience's reaction is to it.
Yeah.
You throw
Imagine
it on
in a band and just be like, yeah, it came out and we're not touring.
Yeah. If you throw something on Netflix, you aren't necessarily ever going to physically see an audience reaction. It's just
I don't know.
out there.
I mean, I go on Twitter and I read some reviews and people post positive ones, and then I don't know, some of them are critical. People are like, it doesn't break the mold of what. I don't know. Fuck, man. I wanted to do a straightforward documentary about boxing that my mom could watch and not feel alienated because she doesn't know anything about boxing. And I wanted to follow, scientists of the sport, not rocky idiots who get punched in the head to landing a punch. I wanted to follow people who could possibly leave this business with their brain intact, smart, ambitious boxers inside the ring and outside the ring who are going to do whatever it takes to win. They're not going to go out there and try to please the fans.
Yeah, and I will say that Southpaw, I'm assuming you saw that. I appreciated the fact that they were pretty realistic about you can become a star in boxing, at least in the short term, by being willing to get the crap beat out of you in order to get your punches in. And that really is about the character learning defense.
God, I hated that movie so much.
Oh, did you really? What did you hate about it?
I thought it was one of the worst boxing movies ever made. First of all, Jake Gyllenhaal is a terrible boxer. He didn't look believable. Secondly, just the whole premise. They went to the thing and the wife died, and then all of a sudden he's a nobody. It didn't make sense. He was just a nobody overnight, but he hadn't lost. It was weird. He lost one fight, and all of a sudden he was living in a gym. One fight, really? No, it was just too extreme. There was so much hyperbole. It was completely unbelievable. And there aren't very, very many believable boxing movies, obviously. But
yeah, well, it's the only movie I think that actually deals with tactics, at least of the big ones.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was pretty bad. I like Raging Bull's good. Rocky is unbelievable. If someone received the punishment they showed in that movie, their brain had fallen out their ear or something. It's just not. I just don't. And for that reason, I don't know. I don't appreciate, it's the same thing with Jaws, like while I'm not some conservationist, I appreciate the sharks for what they are and, try to respect them. But, you make movies about them being man eaters and shit, and people are going to end up going out and killing them out of fear. You make movies in boxing about total idiots who like train by hitting themselves in the head with a sledgehammer, like whatever the unbelievable nature of these movies is. It gives people the wrong impression of what boxing's about. Boxing is not about Mickey Ward, because Mickey Ward, who's in that other movie, The Fighter, I liked watching him somewhat, but he was not a very good boxer. He got destroyed by Floyd Mayweather, and so did Arturo Gatti, who, was his counterpart. And, I thought, especially as an Irish American, Mickey Ward was fun to watch, but you can't show a Mickey Ward fight to your kid and go, see, this would be a good profession. He's not a role model in that way, for me at least. But, Floyd Mayweather, ironically, he's not a role model outside the ring, but inside the ring, he's the ultimate role model ever, maybe in boxing, ever, maybe. Even more so than Ali, maybe. I mean, Ali has Parkinson's disease. Floyd Mayweather has never really been touched. He got hit by Zab Judah, he got hit by Shane Mosley kind of hard, but that was like 2 times. He only I think Chop Orley kind of lit him up a little bit, but his brain he has not received a lot of punishment, and whatever it took athletically and stylistically to do that, that's something you could teach your kid. Look, you can make $750 million and not get a scratch, and the fans won't like it because they want to see you die, but fuck them, you'll have $750 million. That's the stories that I wanted to tell, and because they're unlikely and yet they're pragmatically the only way that rationally you could enter into the sport.
By the way, so it does seem like people are paying attention again more. Like the casual viewer is paying attention to boxing again more. That Jeff Horn Manny Pacquiao fight, it's the first time I saw a lot of my friends on social media being like, "Hey, I'm watching boxing. Oh, I don't get the decision," and I was pretty bummed that it went the way that it did, because it's like
he definitely won. But that was weird. But at the same time, I've watched the fight, and I felt like Pacquiao looked a lot older too. And I thought Horn was busier than him, and Horn looked bigger. He looked stronger. I didn't think that was the Pacquiao we've seen before. So
no, there was no combinations. But what I was bummed about is people felt like they watched the fight and then they didn't get it, and it's like, oh, now they're not going to tune in again. It's kind of like the Mayweather-Pacquiao fight. Pacquiao shows up with a pulled shoulder.
The McGregor thing is going to be the worst thing that's ever happened to boxing. The worst, 100%. This is going to be the most disappointing boxing match in boxing history, and so many people are going to tune in, and it's only going to do good for UFC. Because UFC can come out of this legitimized, no matter if he wins or loses. But boxing-wise, this is such a farce. And just like with the Pacquiao fight, it's got such unrealistic expectations. It's just going to alienate so many people. It's inevitable. I've seen it happen before. And this is the biggest joke in boxing history in the scheme of things. It's a real joke. The only way that boxing comes out of this without a black eye is if Mayweather, just renders him completely unconscious and brutalized, in a few rounds. And that's just not going to happen because he's older and doesn't want to hurt his hands.
Mayweather has been saying he's not as quick as he used to be. It's going to be more, maybe he's just selling the fight like this. But I also believe it because I don't think people ought to be fighting when they're 38 and 40 years old because they're too slow to defend themselves.
Yeah, but he's never had a drop of alcohol. He's never smoked. He doesn't really party. He, puts it out there that he eats unhealthy and all this shit, but it's all bullshit. He's like one of the cleanest athletes there's ever been, and he just doesn't have a lot of mileage on his body. Like I said, he's never really been hurt, and maybe the 2 years off were a good thing. I have no idea. I just know that McGregor is a shitty boxer. He's terrible. He shouldn't. I have 30, almost 20 more fights than he does. And UFC, there's no correlation. These are completely different sports. It'd be the equivalent of saying, oh, well, Roger Federer is now going to compete in the Olympics in ping pong. Like, they have balls that you hit back and forth, but no, and even that isn't even a comparison, because UFC is kicking, jumping, wrestling, running around, grinding your, dong in someone's head and bending them over and backwards and shit.
That's mildly homophobic, and for whatever reason.
I didn't mean it in that way. I just meant that, like, look at their ears. Like, I don't want to be. It's a completely different sport. I don't know anything about it. Yeah, boxing, on the other hand, is about hitting without getting hit, and this guy is terrible. He doesn't know what he's doing. It's a completely different sport again, and I don't know. I think whatever about it, I don't really care. But for the sport, I think it's a really bad thing, because there's no way anyone's coming out of this fight going, wow, boxing, amazing, unless Mayweather beats the shit out of him, like, it ruins him. And I think he'll beat him, like, and he probably won't even get punched once. But, Mayweather tends to disappoint people because he likes to do the safe thing. And
well, he wins rounds by hitting you 3 more times than you hit him.
Yeah.
Which for the casual viewer isn't necessarily the most entertaining thing for for the.
I think it's going to go the distance and be super disappointing. I just McGregor's not going to hit him. He's just going to have fun, stick and move, but beat him up and have a blast. But it's not going to be exciting.
It's whatever. It's going to be as a fan of both UFC and boxing, I would love it. I would love for a result where people come out and say, I want to watch boxing more, because it's building back up a little bit. And I totally understand the technical reasons of why that wouldn't happen. But it's kind of like,
I'm being a pessimist, but GGG's fighting against Canelo. I don't know. I'm a purist, so I think this is a sideshow, and that's cool. It reminds me a lot of when Rocky boxed against Hulk Hogan, might as well be.
I am bummed that the Triple G Canelo fight's not going to get more attention now because of this, because that's a really, really fantastic.
I mean, that's the shit. So I'm thinking about that. I'm also thinking about my buddy Eric Lubins versus Jermell Charlo or whatever. That's going to be amazing. I don't know. There's a couple fights coming up this week. Broner versus Mikey Garcia. Anyway,
Broner, who could be one of the best to stay out of trouble, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see.
Although he's been all right. He if you're not familiar with Adrian Broner, he was doing amazing, and then he got into gambling over bowling and beat up a civilian pretty bad. And then his manager made him move away from his hometown because he couldn't stay out of trouble. And I think he's been okay since moving.
Hey, can you give me 2 seconds? I just got to pee really quick.
Oh yeah, let's just wrap it. Is that okay?
That's cool. Yeah, sure.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for not taking the phone with you and just going for it. So your next film, we don't have an ETA on, but it'll be out there sometime, right?
Yeah, hopefully in the next year. Plus, I got another movie that I finished that I'm just waiting to release too, about Morocco and music in Morocco based on Paul Bowles' book, Their Heads Are Green and Their Hands Are Blue. And then I got this script. I got a bunch of stuff. This boxing, things take forever to come out and make and blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden I got a bunch of things about to come out. Then that thing came out. And, it's unpredictable. But anyway, that boxing movie was hard as hell. I did most of it myself with the camera and equipment and everything. It was a nightmare. But it was a wonderful opportunity to see boxing up close and not have the pressure of having to go in there and punch or be punched,
Yeah, well, you know what, man? I mean, if you hadn't made that movie, we're talking about a kid that, Lil B Hop, when he was in high school and coming up before he turned pro, I mean, he was in you said he was one of the worst neighborhoods in America. He's meeting with Denzel Washington tomorrow, right?
Yeah. So that's cool.
I mean, so that's doing some real work in the world.
That's cool, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Jay Bulger.
I hope people will watch it and, just hit me up on Twitter, Jay Bulger Twitter, so I know that people have seen it. I have no gauge of anything, it sucks.
Because otherwise Netflix might not tell you we watched it.
They don't know. There's 10 reviews on Netflix, and 3 of them are repeats. So there's 4. I don't know.
You know what? That's funny. I've never reviewed something on Netflix, but for you, my friend, I'm going to go do it, okay?
Yeah, Netflix and IMDb are the best. Whatever, man. I really appreciate it, and that would be cool.
And you can't.
There's one review on IMDb, and it's just some guy that said like, "Oh, this is shitty because he chose shitty." I don't know. It was not. He was not in my demographic. Let's put it that way.
Okay, I'll go fix it. Maybe a few other people will.
I would love it. Thank you so much.
Hey, when you do the Iran, I'll hit you on Twitter. When you do the Iran film, particularly, I'd love to get you back on. Okay.
Yeah. Cool. I really appreciate it, Seth. Peace, bro.
Hey, one more note before you go. In addition to reviewing Counterpunch on Netflix and IMDb, if you want to review this podcast, that would be really fantastic as this thing continues to grow. More and more people getting a hold of it that I just have no idea where they're coming from, but I'm thankful for it. Also, the other podcast I'm a part of right now, the Jim Fannin Show, one of the most successful coaches in the world. We're talking Doc Rivers, A-Rod, Frank Thomas, Grant Hill, a whole bunch of other athletes that you've heard of. You can check that out on wherever you download podcasts right now at the Jim Fannin Show. I'm going to play you just a real quick clip as we go out here. Is that in modern society, I've heard it called white space, where you've got nothing going on and you can just focus. I think about my my grandfather was born in 1923. He was old enough to have started farming with horses. If you have to make two horses walk in a straight line for 6 hours, man, you've got a lot of time to think about your life. You really do. Like, I think people think, oh man, well, I'm so glad we don't have to do a lot of those menial tasks anymore like that. But modern society is not set up to leave you this open space to where you have to think about where your life is going, which necessitates the decision for you to get in that helicopter, so to speak, and to go up to 30,000 feet and say, okay, I'm going to take this time and do this. Because it's just harder.
Well, first of all, the average, based on our research, the average person has 2,000 to 3,000 thoughts every day. The average person, Seth, has the majority of those thoughts in chaos, natural chaos. A thought 20 years ago was about 14, 15 seconds. Well, that you can hold one particular thought. Well, that's starting to drop like a stone. So we're holding a thought less, and we're having more thoughts. And you can thank social media, you can thank the cell phone. We're bombarded by more information than ever before in the history of mankind. Yet, the ultimate is to have 30 to 40 less thoughts. And the research I did a kid's research on how to maximize super learning in 1974. You learn more in that first 60 months of your life. All of us, we learn more in that 5 years than the rest of your life cumulative. Super learning. Why is that? You had about 12 to 1,400 thoughts. You didn't go in the past. You didn't have a past. You didn't go in the future. You didn't have a calendar. You didn't have a watch. You told the truth. Why are you black? Why are your teeth crooked? Why does your nose look like that? Mom's freaking out, of course. Oh, my goodness. And if you're tired, well, you'd lay down and sleep under a rack at Walmart. You'd go to sleep. And your imagination was off the chain. I mean, your imagination, you could be a cowboy, a spaceman, a girl could be a ballerina, a movie star, whatever, or a cowboy or a spaceman. All in a matter of seconds. So the world champion, ironically, based on this research, has the same amount of thoughts in one day as a child from birth to 5. That's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
Same amount of thoughts. So think less is the goal. How do you do that? You need a blueprint.